And hello, and welcome to the Cheap Seats. This is your show on One World Sports Radio that covers all the things that are happening in the English Premiership and a little bit of European football here and there once that happens, but mostly in the Premiership. We've got the guys here. We're ready to discuss this week's topic. So much has happened. Arsenal finally found a way to beat a top six opponent in 5 years away from home. Spurs are looking as though they want to take it all, and Liverpool somehow, even though they've conceded the most goals in the league, are top of the log. But before we continue, please do remember to interact with us on these platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We have an Instagram account and on YouTube. But most importantly, please do subscribe on YouTube. Please do share as widely as possible. And let's get this thing going. And as we build this little, this One World Sports Radio platform, and also get the cheap seats as far as and wide as possible to those that love this beautiful game, and also the English game. Gents, how are you doing this week?
So good.
Better than United.
So good.
There's
do we start with an attack on the Zebras?
Somebody who's... AB, I don't think we can hear you.
I'm pretty sure AB is pretending as if he's on mute.
Yeah, it looks like he is. I don't think we can hear him, but we'll sort that out.
I don't want to talk about it.
Why?
Before he goes there. So there was something I found out this week that is actually pretty astounding. Did you know that the collective noun for zebras is a dazzle? Now, you tell me that those zebras weren't dazzling the other
night. They were dazzling last night. Really dazzling last night. Actually, attacking and defending in herds. Like,
look,
how they...
The only way to describe that first goal, they were just all in a bunch.
Yeah, so
at the watering hole.
Let's go in and talking about the Zebras, Ole Zebras, all on safari yesterday against Istanbul Başakşehir. But the most important one is Sunday. Sunday opened up a whole new can of worms because it was 100 games for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He had a very, very winnable game against Arsenal at home. Arsenal haven't won away from home in the against the top six in 5 years. And on top of that, hadn't won at Old Trafford in 14. That seemed to turn, and that turned out to be a win for Arsenal, 1-0 win. But it brought back all the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, I wouldn't say haters, but the critics.
Last week, if you remember on the show, I said, guys, we're talking about people as if they're legends already, you know? And everybody was talking about Solskjaer like, yeah, we're finally turned the corner, PSG, we smashed him. You know what I'm saying? He's back, he's got the wheel. The problem is that sometimes that wheel isn't attached to the actual wheels of the car. And so, but having said that, and I know it's nice to stick the fork in, and I'll let you go to it. The thing here is that we do get carried away in shifts. Everything becomes, it's either he's doing an amazing job or he's doing the worst job on the planet. It's never just like, okay, we lost to Arsenal and we lost to Istanbul, Besiktas,
whatever it is.
Doesn't
matter. That orange team.
Yes, so the question for me, AB, is that he's made it to 100 games. He won 55 of those first 100. It's not a bad record if you compare it to Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool, who only had won 50 on the dot. Mourinho at United in his first 100 were 162. But will Ole make it to 200? That's all we want, because Mourinho didn't make it. Van Gaal didn't make it. Moisey, I don't think Moisey made it to 100. But it looked as though last week he was at the wheel, the bus was moving in the right direction. All of a sudden, a game against Arsenal, and then something terrible happening in Istanbul, and everyone's now asking for Pochettino.
So look, Oli was at the wheel. We all thought the wheel was on. We all thought the wheel was on a nice axle. Turns out that axle was broken. It was right there. Can't believe Cyrus missed that. Can't believe Cyrus missed that. But Look, Ollie has had a good first 99 games in charge. However, this 100 game and this 101th game are actually going to build up a
101.
lot of.
Sorry.
So 101st, sorry.
Content here,
That's the
right?
first problem with the United. Oh, count.
Guys, I'm an accountant. I'm not an English professor. That's my bad.
But it's
My
still
English are
the
not
same
good.
Oh, AB.
Can we do that again?
Done?
Can we do that again?
Ole has done this to you.
Oh man, yeah. So I'm really traumatized by this. So, like, the thing that I find rather amazing about Ollie's United is our I can say our. I'm wearing the bloody shirt. Is our ability to lose games against teams that you shouldn't even be considering losing to. I won't count Arsenal as that because Arsenal are a proper
You
team.
should have lost that. You should have won that game, by the way.
Yeah.
Just
But I mean, United didn't play like they were going to win that game. Arsenal had more chances. They should have buried that game long ago. They got a very soft penalty, but a righteous penalty, and they took their chances. United didn't even create chances. And I was looking at some stats. United under Ole have lost 25 in 101 games. You know, that's 1 every 4, basically. I think the maths is correct there. Whereas under Jose, they lost 28 in 140 odd. So say what you like about Jose Mourinho being the wrong man for United. He was a great manager. He built his team around, like every team that he has built around a strong defense. And the only criticism I can say from Jose was we didn't win enough games under him, but he had made the inroads to solidifying the team. Whereas Oli now is all about scoring, almost 2 goals a game, which is great, but we're conceding more than a goal a game. And that is a huge problem for a Man United team right now.
Do you think he's lost the dressing room?
I don't necessarily think so. I just think that he doesn't know his best 11, and it's evidenced by us, United playing a 5 or 3-5-2, however you want to call it, or 3-5-2 or 5-3-2 against PSG, against Leipzig, and then going against what was so successful by playing a 4-3-2 or a diamond or whatever against Arsenal, and then repeating that against Istanbul. Historically, Oli has done really well on the counter-attack, and it may not be the traditional Man United way that he was taught and all of that beautiful stuff that we know from the Ferguson years, but it seems like his United doesn't have an identity, and the identity that has evolved naturally throughout his 101 games in charge is something that he doesn't want to embrace. And it's very conflicting.
Let me bring Cyrus and Dean into here. Chelsea played Manchester United.
I was about to jump in there.
Yeah,
They looked a lot more solid. Well, we'll go to Dean and the 6-1, but they looked a lot more solid against you guys. They went very defensive with 3 at the back. What are their problems? Is it Ole? Is it the composition of the players? When you look at that side, which I think is probably top 4 best in the league after Liverpool, I'm going to put Tottenham at 3 because I think they're stacked. But what's going on? Is it the coaching? Or is it just the players don't want to
It's a little bit of everything. It's a little bit of everything. And I think it has to do primarily with first not understanding what your best defensive unit is. Sometimes it's been a question of not knowing the players that will best suit that. And other times it's because of injuries or, illness or whatever it is. So you don't necessarily always have the best back 5. But I think what Ole has always given himself is options. And it's a similar thing to Frank Lampard, because I think that we're not necessarily talking enough about the intersections between them as managers. They have a lot of options available to them. They are in charge of big clubs who have very high expectations in terms of trying to challenge for trophies, win trophies, that sort of thing. And then the other thing being that they have a fan base that are very vocal about what they want to see. So when you look at what's happening with Solskjaer, he's almost caught in 2 worlds here. The Cardiff Solskjaer is probably the closest to what you'd see to what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's ethos is. He wants them to try and play to whatever opposition they're playing against. They don't want to lose games, but at United, you're supposed to chase a victory and by any means necessary. So as AB mentioned with Mourinho's failing was rather there was no flair, and everybody absolutely tore into him because United don't have an identity. This is not the United I loved. That United has been gone for almost 10, 15 years. So what you're talking about is the bygone era. In fact, hashtag make United great again should be trending. But
yes,
exactly, because that United just doesn't exist. So I think one of the key things here is Solskjaer needs to then look at who his attacking triumvirate quartet, 5 players will be, 100th player. What did you say, AB? Anyway,
101.
101.
101.
Amazing.
That's honestly where we are as a club. 101.
It's still better than Trump in the vote count. But the thing for me is, when you look at it, he needs to have there's almost the blocks that they're missing, and I seem to be talking way too much about United here, but they've got a good goalkeeper in David De Gea. They've got an excellent number 2 who hasn't seen any game time in Dean Henderson. Then in front of them, it's anyone's guess as to who's going to pitch up. They could play Luke Shaw. They could play Harry Maguire, who seems to be the butt of all jokes at the moment, but he's the best defender you have, actually, because regardless of whether or not you like Lindelof or whether or not you like Bailly or any of the others, he is the central rock that defense will be built around. And then you've got Aaron Wan-Bissaka on the right flank. So what then happens moving forward? And that's where Ole's major problem is that the engine room really doesn't look like much. When Bruno Fernandes is playing well, he's looking good, but what system is he being used in? And then if you're using Matic, do you then play with him playing deep and then having Pogba and Bruno doing all the attacking with then some width? You just don't know what you're getting with United. And I'm going to say a lot of controversial things in the last points here. I know that everybody loves Marcus Rashford. I'm a fan of him as an individual. He smacks a little bit of Chicharito for me in the sense that he can weigh in with some very, very big goals, but not necessarily effective enough to change games. And that's been one of the major issues. I think Martial is not a center forward that's going to take United. I absolutely love that I've caused so much angst here. I said the controversial stuff. Look, Martial, because we also don't know what position he plays. And I think this is the thing for me about Rashford, is that Rashford and, Chicharito is actually really a horrid comparison because he's not been that bad. To tell the truth, and I thought about this a couple of weeks ago, Rashford is the early days of Cristiano Ronaldo. Yeah. Ronaldo was brought in to be a winger. He played as a winger, wasn't all that great. As soon as he started making his way forwards to a center-forward role, suddenly you saw the absolute best of him. And Rashford is almost caught between those two. He's playing off the flank to come in, and then he's going from the middle to go to the flank, and you're not necessarily getting the absolute best out of him every game. He's the kind of player with the skill set that he has. He should be dominating games. I have not seen Marcus Rashford dominate a string of games. And that's one of the key things that's been lacking at United. My piece has been said.
Okay, I'm gonna give AB a chance to. Do you have a reply to the whole Marcus Rashford being the second coming of Chicharito?
No. I mean, Cyrus retracted that, and I get the Ronaldo comparisons because, I mean, even their technique is very similar. But the only thing that I can say about that is Ronaldo had a superstar in Van Nistelrooy and a superstar in Rooney who was pulling the away from him. We've got Martial who doesn't know how to play as a number 9. I mean, yes, he scored a number 9 goal. Yes, he scored 20 goals last year, but he really, Martial's not a number 9. He's average at best in that role. Rashford doesn't have those people around him. He doesn't have an Erling Haaland. He doesn't have a Benzema. He doesn't have a Robert Lewandowski.
And note that, and Dean, note that he's giving you the list that he wants, his transfer list.
Yeah.
He doesn't have
that's also United's fault though, because he doesn't have those guys because he just hasn't been able to get anybody.
Yeah, Marcus Rashford can only do so much. He can only turn up, train, feed the kids. That's it.
Dean, what do you? It must be nice for you to listen to other people's problems, right? But
You know it.
Surely Spurs
That
have a
is
problem.
brilliant.
Surely we can
You
find
know
a
it.
problem.
Dean, how great is it to not be the crap one? This is basically what he just said.
I'm loving it. No, but I think also Wayne, what Cyrus is saying. I also spent a bit of time thinking about it, and as much as it pains me to say, first of all, okay, I don't think it's a case of if Ole is going to get fired. It's a case of when. And that's what I'm alluding to. You kind of look at the managers, and I genuinely think Poch is the best person for that job. Not apart from anything else, but what Poch is great at is solidifying a team, getting players to come together, and really developing that team spirit, which is what I think also United are really lacking. They're lacking that, and a lot of people have said it, they're lacking that leadership, they're lacking that cohesiveness. There's no sort of team that you can really see. And I think that's exactly what Poch did at Spurs. No, Cyrus, it's my turn to talk.
I want to just say something to that. He'll also get backed by the board. That's the difference.
Fair, 100%. So, it pains me to say. The only thing is, Poch was great at Spurs and Southampton, and he didn't have the caliber of players that United have. And that also kills me to say because I always back Spurs. But he didn't have a Pogba, He had a 20-year-old Dele Alli that just came from MK Dons, which he turned into a good player. Can Poch handle those sort of personalities in the dressing room? That's the only question I may have. He is really good at taking a bunch of young players or undeveloped players and really making them feel collective and really good. And, that's what I think United need. But honestly, that's the biggest issue I saw. And you see it last night. I mean, you look at that goal, the comments about Demba Ba scoring, I sat laughing the whole day. But I think that's what they need. And Poch is by far the best person for the job. The interesting thing that Cyrus was saying, you look at the Rashford Ronaldo comparison, you look at when Ronaldo actually made that transition from winger to center, and it was under Mourinho at Real Madrid. So then you start thinking, well, if they kept Mourinho a little bit, I'm really glad they did it. Could he, sort of then identifying those sort of qualities and then putting him in?
Well, there's another striker that you have that's been converted into a number 9, and that is Ronaldo. But we're going to leave that for another day. On the other side of that Manchester United loss was an Arsenal team that was looking to find their feet. They'd lost to Leicester. They struggling to score goals. And then so from my perspective, I looked at it and I was like, okay, fine. Yes, we won at Old Trafford and that's what we need. But it gave me the sense that they are on the right track. They have the best defensive record in the league, not based on clean sheets, but based on goals conceded. That's 7. Yes, we understand it's a topsy-turvy season, but that's a tick in the books. It looks as though they've backed Arteta with the signings of Partey and Gabriel, who I think is the best signing in the league. But Cyrus will probably tell me that one of his 223 million and I'll get told that a guy who was playing golf last year is better. But I look at this Arsenal team and all the things that AB is complaining about, we have. We're solid at the back. Yes, David Luiz has moments, but seemingly it's working out with Gabriel there. You've got a structure in that 3-4-3 that isn't scoring a lot of goals, but they're not conceding much, which keeps them in games for much longer. And I look at the way Arteta is setting this team up with Thomas Partey as the man in the middle, just covering everything up, and the resurgence of a Mo Elneny. I look at this team and I'm like, okay, we're on the right track. It might not be top 6 this year, but he gives an impression that this Arsenal team will be able to compete, not maybe next year, but in the years to come, in the next 3 to 4 years. The question is, do they have similar patience, and the biggest problem with this team is they can't score goals. So it's going to be frustrating, similar to what AB's going through in terms of you'll take 2 steps forward, then you'll take 1 step back. And I think for me, that's what the issue with this team is. We're on the right track. It's just this track's going to stop at stations longer than normal. And that Leicester game 2 weeks ago was an example of that. But obviously looking at you guys, I'll go to Dean first because he's on the other side of North London. Are you scared of us? That's the one question I want.
I mean, the answer is always going to be no. But I think you see the way Arsenal played against United, and you think, okay, that is the way they can play. But then also you see exactly what you said, Leicester, right? And to be honest, I forgot El Neni existed. I genuinely forgot that he even played for Arsenal. When I saw him playing,
a lot of people did.
Yeah, is that Gendouzi that just got a tan, but he left. So, where's the guys coming from?
Guendouzi with a tan. Oh, my word.
But I think Arteta's onto a good thing there, as much as, again, it hurts. But it's more a case of Arteta's identified thing, and it's definitely from what he's learned from Pep and all of that kind of stuff. He's identified the back as being an area where he needs to develop, and that's really where he's looking at, and he's building that central midfield to be as strong as possible with guys like Partey, and El Neni really was amazing over the weekend. You can't doubt that. It's more the case of, can they sustain it? I don't know. I mean, everyone loves Aubameyang from an Arsenal perspective, but this season he's just not doing it. And where's the backup? Where's the other goal scorer coming from? Just don't see it coming. And yeah, it's almost like an Arsenal is pulling a Spurs. They're going to Arsenal it up sometimes. They're going to go up. They're going to go down.
All I can say is the old Spurs wouldn't go to Old Trafford and win. So that's something that we...
the very, very, very old
Trafford and win. We demolished 6-1.
Yeah. That's a gargantuan club. Just be very careful.
AB, when you watched, what do you think of what Arteta is trying to do? Obviously, we played you on Sunday, so you got to see a glimpse of the 3-4-3 that is a shadow of a 4-4-3-3 or whatever he wants to do.
So, I mean, Arsenal have a great keeper in Bernd Leno. Give him time, he'll establish himself as a Premier League stalwart and someone who you can look back on and say he had a great Premier League career. The guy who really impressed me was Thomas Partey. He took apart United's midfield like they were nothing. And you've got on one end World Cup winner Paul Pogba, 80-odd million, 90-odd million, I don't care how much he costs. But he was humbled. Thomas Partey showed bite. He showed that desire, that fight. Sort of what Arsenal have been lacking since the days of Patrick Vieira. I know Cesc came in and, Cesc wasn't that sort of player. Jack Wilshere wasn't that sort of player. But Arsenal, I think, for a club who've got a lot of flair, quick passing, high tempo, and all of that, needs someone who's going to work his socks off, get stuck in and do the dirty work in midfield. And that for me is where Arsenal just dominated that game, in that midfield. And if you control the midfield like Arsenal did against United, you control the game. If you control the game, it doesn't matter if Aubameyang's off form just because he got paid. It doesn't matter if Lacazette can't put a ball in the back of the net because he's Lacazette. It doesn't matter if Nicolas Pepe can't, get a shot on target because Nicolas Pepe needs time, but he's got all the qualities there. Eddie Nketiah is still young. Sako can play up front in the front three. You need to start from the back, and that's important for Arteta, and he's doing it really well. The goals will come. I don't think this season, maybe, but they will come. So I was very envious of that, rather than a United team who have goal scorers up there, but they can't get the ball there, and they can't get the ball in good chances. So very envious. Well done too.
My question to you is, I look at this Arsenal side and I look at Gabriel as the thing. But there was a comment that was made by Roy Keane that said Arsenal did not deserve Thomas Partey. All the signings of Thomas Partey and Gabriel, signings Arsenal should not have made. But somehow they're bargains because of what we're seeing.
The current football economic climate is an absolute dog show. And I don't agree with the pricings of players. I don't agree with what is being spent by clubs. I think it's an abomination. Also, I don't think that Roy Keane is a pundit. That's my personal opinion. He literally is just like the Grinch. They roll him out there to just look like he's just had a terrible day and ask him some football related questions. And so he's there more as filler, and he doesn't necessarily add a lot of I mean, there's a reason why he's not kept many coaching jobs, because when it comes down to it, he just doesn't seem to do what needs to be done on that front. Now, in terms of Arsenal, I think Gabriel has been one of the good signings for you. Chelsea were looking at him too. So you can definitely see that there was a lot of quality there. The question marks were, could he fit into the system? All of that stuff. Getting Partey is a fantastic move for Arteta. And any of these sort of newer coaches in the league should do what Arteta's done, which is try and make sure that you're solid at the back and then build from there. The only issue might come in when you have to start dismantling some of that defense in order to start putting creativity in. And I don't mean it in terms of the defensive players, but in the midfield. Because right now, you've got Partey, you've got El Neni, and then you've got Granit Xhaka, who's also thrown into the mix, and none of them are really creative. Partey's not a box-to-box kind of guy. So, you can ask him to do certain things, but he'll only be able to do so much. So at some point, there will have to be a Cesc, or dare we even mention his name because he's been set to the fringes, Mesut Ozil, who would be the central creative figure within your space. The issue here is what happens around that. There's clearly a weird politics happening in your club around Ozil, and there needs to be a Wilshere, Ramsey-esque kind of player who then starts to dictate what happens going forward. Because as is, that Arsenal team with an Aubameyang should not be struggling to score goals. And the fact that he's playing left wing, not even just coming off the left to right in, he's playing left wing is nuts. It's absolutely nuts to me.
So what we saw on Saturday was something very interesting. Bukayo Saka was started to play on the left as a left wing back, but whenever Arsenal attacked, he would go into that space at the 10 and allow Tierney to play the wing back, which forced Aubameyang into the middle, which is something I think Arteta might want to do against the bigger teams. If you lose the ball there, you find yourself in a lot of trouble. And on the other side, Bellerin does that too with that penalty that happened, where he'll come inside and add an extra body, but it's not that creative force that you want. AB, what did you want to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was just the once-off against United, because United don't have a right attacking option at all. Yes, Greenwood was there, but he was more of a central striker because they had the diamond and the two up front. We know United going forward on the right fullback, Aaron Wan-Bissaka is not a Trent Alexander-Arnold. So I think maybe that was just a nice tactical
sort of counter, counter stroke. But even then, when you look at that though, and going to Aaron Wan-Bissaka, he could play up and down the flank, but he knows he can't leave his duties at the back because he's leaving the door wide open back there.
I think the problem with that was that they got double teamed. Wan-Bissaka and Luke Shaw were always double teamed whenever Arsenal attacked, and that goes to the fact that your midfielders weren't wide enough, and or your front three weren't defending back, because you just need a body. You don't need someone to actually do all of that. But that's for another, because I wrote a thesis about this on Twitter and in the group. Let's talk about the team on the other end of the thing, and I'm going to bring you, Dean, into this. In terms of, if you look at the log right now, there are two teams that I didn't think would be at the bottom, but they are. And that's Burnley and that's Sheffield. They haven't won a game each, and they did very well last year. And if I look at Burnley, and I look at this Burnley side, and Tottenham played them, and Chelsea played them, and we'll go to that to you, Cyrus, after this. But they did not make any moves. And all of a sudden, that Burnley team that was mid-table, comfortable last season, now can't even buy a goal, and also even buy a win. And they didn't spend, they spent 1 million rand, 1 million, not rand, well, they could have, but
basically
on Dale Stevens, who I think might probably be worth 1 million rand. Do you need to spend, because if we look at Aston Villa, who spent 87 million pounds, and Leeds, who spent 90 million pounds, and look where they are, top half, trying to punch it with the best, is that the formula for the lower end teams? You need someone to back you and to go. Is it the end of the team like Burnley, who tries to be as frugal as possible but still punch above their weight?
Yeah, so I'm just going to point out, before the season started, I predicted Burnley to go down. So if that comes true, I will be pundit of the year.
You said that on the show, if I remember correctly. You did mention Burnley to go down.
And everyone raised their eyebrows at me. But my thing is more, and I think we saw it against, saw it against Spurs for sure with Burnley. They can play. Like, there's no doubt that they can play, right? And as a defensive unit, what Sean Dyche has got there is something that can really put the best of the best to the sword, and they can frustrate teams. It's the other side where Chris Wood and Barnes are just not doing. They're just not scoring. They're not doing what they need to do. And yeah, Dyche didn't get backed in the transfer market. We know that, but you know, it's almost like, do you expect Burnley to really push on from a mid-table team? No. I think that board sits down with Dyche every single year and says, just keep us up. Whatever you need to, just keep us up. That's their sole ambition. I don't see them going any further than that. So do they need to go and spend all of that money? Because they probably turn around saying, well, you did it with these guys. Can't, just do it with them. And it's unfortunate for a coach like Dyche, because I think he's a really good coach. I don't think he's a top 6 coach probably, although maybe Arsenal. But they know.
Wow. Okay.
That is the slyest dig. Love it.
Wow.
The transfer thing, though, you have to look at it on the other side, and that's where I'm going to say Spurs, when 2 years ago we didn't spend a single thing in the summer transfer market, we still finished 4th, right? And that's just because we still had the players that could do the game and you can still play. And that's when your coaching ability, and that's where I feel your coaching ability really gets tested, for you to pull the guys together, know that you're on the back foot, and really try and motivate the guys 10 times more than what you normally would have to. So I don't think you need to spend massively to do well, because I've experienced it, but I do think that there were definite weaknesses in both Sheffield and Burnley, which weren't sorted. And that doesn't mean you need to go and spend massive amounts of money. It just wasn't addressed, and that's where I think the shortfall is.
Sheffield went to go and spend 23 million on a striker, Ryan Brewster, who was necessarily unproven, but it wasn't the part of the field that they necessarily needed to strengthen. Cyrus, your club spent 223 million pounds on the front foot.
A glut of players.
Yes, but your club's always been that club that's always at the forefront of buying. Yes, Man City. No, we leave Man City aside. They spent $1 billion over the past 5 years. Is that the type of expectation that you want as a fan for your club to always buy in order to move forward? Do you feel as though if they don't buy, they'll fall behind?
Well, it's an interesting thing, because when we look at it, and remember this, the Premier League doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? It isn't just like the last 5 years. So Alex Ferguson always spent money. Every single year, he made sure he tweaked something within that system, and I talk about it in my book, Competitive Edge, available in stores.
That's fine.
How's that for a plug? But
no, the great thing about Competitive Edge is that you can read it in Cyrus's voice. So that's the part about it. So you go out and get it and have Cyrus in your head.
But oh God, no one wants that. But the thing though was, what Ferguson understood was that he needed to maintain competition within the squad, and bringing somebody new in a key position meant everybody suddenly felt as if they needed to bring their A game, and they had the resources to do that. Now, do you need to go out and buy, like Chelsea have done, a heck of a lot of different players? You don't have to, but you have to buy strategically. What positions do you need filled? Where do you want to do things? And Chelsea have actually done exactly that. They've bought a new goalkeeper who's changed the complete dynamic of what's happening at the back. They went and brought in a 36-year-old defender for free, and he's been an absolute delight in Thiago Silva, and he's brought the best out of the other guys in the back line. Chilwell, the best left back we've had since Ashley Cole, and I'll say that right now. So then when you start looking at the others, the Werners, the Havertz's, and then of course we're going to talk about Hakim Ziyech. You look at them and you say, yes, Willian has gone, Pedro's gone, so we needed somebody to fill that right flank. Hakim Ziyech is the perfect fit in that specific role, and now we see him getting close to his best, and he's doing what he's always been capable of doing. He just needed a bigger stage. So I think that certain clubs have to spend some in order to remain competitive at the top. Some, like Spurs, had done, and remember, Chelsea also had a transfer ban, so we also have gone through that whole not being able to bring players in and had to play the youth and managed to get into the top four. It is a possibility if you've got the right coaching team behind you and the right players. The problem here is Sean Dyche is the second coming of Sam Allardyce in a way. Whether maybe the football's a little bit better, not a heck of a lot when you're looking at Chris Wood and who's his strike partner.
Ashley Barnes.
They are prototypical 1990s football strikers. You know, when you're looking for a big guy to lump it up to, and this guy will run around and try and win every header, and then try and decapitate the defender. That's what you're going to get with those guys. But you don't have a lot of the cuteness. And to round off the point here, Dean mentioned calling Burnley going down early. I still don't think they will, because where we raised our eyebrows was saying, are you really serious that Burnley are worse than Fulham and West Brom? And right now in the table, it looks that way, but things will correct.
West Brom are going down. They just
and that's exactly it. That those guys just don't have another level to rise to. They don't know what it's like to compete in the Premier League at that level. So Sheffield United took a punt in Ryan Brewster, and I hope he comes good, because teams like them, like Bournemouth when they brought in Dom Solanke, you want to see these youngsters be given a big stage to say, go out there and play. It's been really tough for Chris Wilder. I hope he sees out what's happening with them, because these small teams tend to change coaches way too often. Ride out the storm. If you go down, you go down. But Chris Wilder is that guy, and I hope that they stick with him.
AB, your team spent money in this transfer window. They didn't get the players that I know you would have wanted. Is it always important to go out and tweak? Because I know Sir Alex did it, and that's the mark of a true champion and leader. You tweak every time you're at the top. But when you're chasing in these financial times and you get quoted ridiculous amounts, is it worth it in the end?
So I think we need to draw a line and separate spending versus strengthening. Because often you don't need to spend big to strengthen, especially in this sort of window. Have a look at what Chelsea did with Thiago Silva and what Tottenham did with Gareth Bale. You've got quality, proven players who've won league titles. Bale's won, I think, 4 Champions Leagues, one more than his manager. So
and he played golf last year.
Doesn't matter. He's still a quality.
Doesn't matter. He can win a golf championship. It will be more.
He's still a quality player, and I think this is where United missed a trick. Ollie obviously drafted his list of wants, which would have strengthened, but would have required some spending, and it seemed like the board didn't want to spend that sort of money. So then it ended up in panic buys and things like that. But it's now about being a little bit smart, and this is where every single other club in the Premier League has done this well, barring the Burnleys, the Sheffield. Well, we yet to know about Sheffield yet. But if you look at Liverpool, for example, having won the league, with an incredible sort of run. Yes, they had a few slip-ups towards the end of the league, but that's they still won the league after 30 odd years. They went and signed someone like Diogo Jota, and
Thiago.
Thiago.
And Thiago. I mean, Thiago unfortunately has been injured, but he'll be okay. But these are 2 world-class players who have to now fit into this Liverpool title-winning side, the same side who won the Champions League the season before. And competition breeds success. And Roberto Firmino now will be looking over his shoulder, wondering, am I secure in my floating sort of role? What did United do last season? United signed Odion Ighalo, a man who couldn't cut it for Watford, to compete with Anthony Martial.
That's rough.
Great at Watford.
If anything, he was one of the better players there. He just obviously chased the dollar.
In China.
And then went to China and did all of that. But again, it shows a lack of understanding in a major football club versus some great decision-making in real football clubs. And that's where we are.
You're a gargantuan team. Just
I was about to say gargantuan.
We're a gargantuan business.
We're expecting Gargantua
Hashtag we love you, Wahid.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's move on to the more fantasy-like things, but we're still going to be talking about real-life things. Cyrus, Hakim Ziyech, I'm converted. I'm converted. But can you give us and everyone watching this and listening why you were so all in on him and how he fits in this Chelsea? Because I saw that 4-3-3 and I thought Havertz was too far deep, but it seemed to work with Havertz running around, playing as a makeshift number 10 behind the front three, and Ziyech was picking balls up in places where he shouldn't have, but he did an incredible job at it, and an assist and a goal. Is this guy the real deal? Do you guys have a superstar?
I think Hakim Ziyech is one of the world's superstars. He just hasn't had the platform for it. When Ajax have done well in the Champions League, he's been the key contributor in that team. So it was interesting to see a lot of the other players get signed around him and him stay in Amsterdam. And I think that was obviously a saving grace for Chelsea, because we needed to have somebody replace the enterprise of Willian and Pedro. Willian was hugely frustrating for the Chelsea support base because he had a lot of skill, and when he was on his game, he was unstoppable, but you never knew when that was going to happen. So thank you for taking him from us.
Yeah, I know. I'm in the Willian cycle now. It's funny.
It is a weird thing, because when he can be unplayable at times, but he just isn't always there. Hakim Ziyech is the kind of player who utilizes his skill set very, very well. He's not as quick as a Willian or a Pedro, but he is fast. But his ability to spot a gap, his ability to control the ball and then make not just a good pass, but a clever pass too, will be one of the things that we'll be talking about all season.
Yes, I was there was the Timo Werner goal. I think the assist that he made there was just unbelievable. They say he looks like Angel Di Maria. He plays like not.
No.
Well, we hope he.
I don't see it.
We hope he's not that. Dean, I have a question for you around Gareth Bale. And does Gareth Bale's presence in the side take away from the development of a young Dutch winger in Steven Bergwijn, who, similar to Hakim Ziyech, many are expecting great things?
Yeah, it's a good point, and it's something that a lot of the Spurs guys are actually talking about. The thing is, you can't take away what Gareth has brought to the team. That's the thing. You just, that presence, that sort of big star that's really coming into the team and making everyone feel a little bit more, hey, he's here, so like feel a little bit more belief, coming together. So we saw Gareth Bale, and Mourinho alluded to it in the middle of the week. Gareth doesn't have 90 minutes in him, so he'll never play a full game. He's definitely using Europa League to develop him and to get him up to speed, which he'll probably play tonight. But you look at Steven Bergwijn, and he looks like that winger that you actually want in your team, that guy that's going to come on and then cut in. And that's exactly what you want normally. And you look, he's definitely got the temperament. His debut against City, he scored that goal, which, sent everyone crazy. He really is good, but I think this is really where Mourinho's sort of man-to-man coaching ability will really look to. We'll see if it can develop there. I want Bergwijn to learn from Bale. Essentially, that would be my best. That would be the hope that I have for him. He is a world quality player. He is young, and he will grow into that role. But I wouldn't put Bergwijn ahead of Bale at the moment in my team. I think actually what we're seeing is Lamela is playing a better role now, and Lamela is actually the go-to player for the moment, with Bale being the impact player coming on 70 minutes and playing the rest of the game. It may change, but that's more the way I see it going.
From a fantasy perspective, which outside of Son and Bale and Kane, not Bale and Kane, are there any other players that people should be considering in their squads? Because Mourinho likes to rotate until he finds a settled squad, but it seems like that midfield's been chopping and changing a while, and I think a lot of people aren't getting the returns that they were liking from A Regulon and B a Matt Doherty. who else in that squad can we rely on?
No one. From a fantasy perspective, it's Kane and Son. But the one thing that I would probably say is defensively, I wouldn't put a Spurs player in unless it's one of the wing backs being Doherty or Reguilon. It's just not working. The defense is leaky. It's going to be that way for the rest of the season, I would imagine. The only person that you may look to get in, and that's what I alluded to, is definitely Lamela. He's on the cheap on the fantasy. He's definitely going to start playing. I think Mourinho's really taken a liking to him, and he's almost that dog-eat-dog player that Mourinho likes. He really wants to get in people's faces. He wants to, he really wants to be aggressive on the ball, and it's going to lead to goals. It's going to lead to assists. He'll be there. So other than that, I think if you're looking for someone on the cheap fantasy, probably Lamela from a Spurs perspective, but throwing in something that maybe we can chat about is Jota's 6.4 on FPL as a midfielder.
Yes. AB, I know you've got
That's
Diego.
something.
I think you've mentioned that you have Diego Jota in your side.
So, I mean, after last week's horrible return on fantasy for me, I free hit. And I thought Diego Jota, why not? And I mean,
I free hit after week 2, so I can't even complain.
Yeah, I think I might have missed the
Yeah, just have a go. And I experimented with Diego Jota, and I experimented with Jamie Vardy, and it paid off really nicely. But I mean, Diego Jota, look, right now I'm not really in the Liverpool sort of sphere. I don't know what's going on, on a daily basis with their club, so you can ask the Liverpool fans about that. But I don't know if he's going to start as yet, because Roberto Firmino, even though he's not as productive in the goals and assists, he does have an important role that he plays. He's that pressing forward. So will Jota start? We don't know. So it is still a bit of a risk. I think maybe let's give it this week. Also, they are playing City, so it's not really a must-have right now, because you don't want to go and spend 6.5 mil on a player and then he doesn't feature regularly. If, however, Firmino got injured or Mane got injured, spend some money, put them in with Salah.
Does they change in formation with a 4 up front with Salah at the top of the castle and your 3 guys behind them being Mane, I'm assuming Jota and Firmino? Does that change your view on Diego Jota? Because that's what Liverpool showed us last week, for the past 2 weeks. They took and then last week they went back to that 3.
Yeah, it's just I'm worried about this Liverpool team because they do have a few injuries. I think Fabinho's still out, so I don't know what they're going to come out with just yet. But look, I mean, I had a punt with him, and I was actually quite worried because the way I free hits was I literally focused on my starting 11 and I didn't care about the bench, which is actually quite interesting for a free hit sort of tactic, because you can go and then buy guys who are 3.9 whatever and put the money on the starting 11. And when he didn't start, I was a little bit concerned. And then
but then he ended up scoring, so that kind of
came on and scored. I mean, I was celebrating a Liverpool goal. It was like
it felt wrong.
Yeah. It always feels wrong. So I noticed that Hakim Ziyech is an 8 in fantasy, which I think is a bargain. And based on the way that Frank seems to be stumbling into his formation, and we pray that he's realized that against Burnley, that's the formation he needs to play. Is Hakim Ziyech the differential that everybody, well, if you're looking to try and make up points, that's the guy you need to look to?
I think that Ziyech will definitely be. He's showed a lot of what you want in a fantasy player in terms of key passes, being able to take people on, and then trying to get balls into the box. And he's also, the thing with him critically is that he takes shots. That's something that we're not seeing from a lot of other midfielders. So you want your guys to take shots, and I think Ziyech will definitely be one of those. And regardless of the formation Frank plays, he will always have a spot for him because that's where he really needs him. Now, if you look at where Chelsea are at the moment, and this is what's going to be interesting for people who want to look at Chelsea for fantasy players. So there's no Havertz. He's out with COVID-19.
For 2 games.
Yeah. Pulisic was injured, might feature this weekend because he pulled out in the warm-up against Burnley. and so he didn't play in the Champions League game, but he could be available this weekend. I have a feeling Frank might not take a punt on him immediately, but then he's also the kind of coach who says, look, if you're feeling fine, then we'll put you in. But Ziyech will probably be the key guy. Tammy Abraham is another one that if you're going to go for somebody, Tammy Abraham might get a game. If Pulisic is missing, that means that Werner plays out on the left, which means that Abraham will probably start as the center striker, and he'd be a good person to look at as well. But as I've showed in fantasy football, don't listen to me. Just go with your gut, because I'm terrible. I went and I made a decision that I needed to get a City player in, and because I knew City were going to win their last game. But instead of going Kevin De Bruyne, as I should have done as a logical human being, I went and picked Raheem Sterling, and Raheem Sterling, he disappointed me in a way I cannot actually describe. It's like finding out that the tattoo that you got doesn't say what you think it does.
Okay. So let's end the show with captaincy options. This week, you've got Manchester City playing Liverpool in a clash of the top two. You've got Everton versus Manchester United as a very tasty game. Leeds play Crystal Palace if you're into the Patrick Bamford fame. You've also got Chelsea against Sheffield, which might be good for Ziyech. Tottenham play West Brom, so Son and Son and Kane come into the reckoning there. Who are your captaincy options for this week? Dean, is it your beloved Spurs, or are you going with the differential that you're considering?
So last week I told everyone that I'm captaining Kane because I saw AB captain Son, and then he went and changed his captain to Kane. So I'm not going to say who my captain is. I'm actually captaining Matt Ryan as a goalkeeper.
Look at the fixtures and tell me what your options are.
No, but all jokes aside, look, if you're not captaining either Son or Kane, you don't know what you're doing in fantasy. West Brom are going to leak goals like mad. Son or Kane are definite. Kane or Son or both are definitely going to get assists. They're going to get goals. It's literally just a matter of picking who you want. For me, I'm going Son, so well done, AB. You can change your captain to Son now. And then hopefully he gets a lot of assists and goals.
Cyrus, Chelsea's playing Sheffield. Do you see some goals in there for Werner or Ziyech, whoever you have in your fantasy?
Yeah, I do. I think like I said, if you're going Chelsea, Werner's a really, really good option, considering Frank Lampard came out and said he is now our number one penalty taker. He took 2 against Rennes and scored both. And so he also wins a lot of penalties as well. And so I think that he's a good shout to have as a potential captain if you're looking outside of the Spurs fold. I think that when you're looking at who you want as your captain in your lineup, you got to look at the fixtures here. And for me, we've mentioned a lot of the sort of biggish teams. What we haven't mentioned is one of the teams that's outside of the top 4 who's got a fairly easy fixture, and I say easy, and that's Arsenal. Arsenal are playing Villa, and Villa they've leaked goals. Yes, they've beaten Liverpool 7-2, but as I said at the time, there was a bit of a flash in the pan. I think that if you're going to go for anybody, this might be the game Aubameyang actually gets a lot more points than usual. And so I think that that game's one where if you're going to go for an Arsenal player and you go for Oba, this will be the one to do it.
Yeah, I think he's the only one in that Arsenal side that you could go for. I'm not. I think the only Arsenal player that I'm looking at that's done well this season is Bellerin, but that's because they attack through the wing. So it's either Saka or Bellerin, and Saka's very cheap if you want somebody to sit on your bench and come on if no one's playing. My captaincy pick, I think I have to consider possibly Jamie Vardy against Wolves. Wolves haven't necessarily hit their stride, but Jamie Vardy's always good for a party, so that's always awesome. But there is a Son and Kane somewhere there that I'm holding in the back pocket. AB, who are your captaincy options this week? Are you considering any Manchester United or Everton players this weekend, or any Everton players? Seeing that
Dominic.
Everton to win?
Right now, I have Kane as my captain because he was captain last week. Thanks, Dean, for the heads up. Sometimes it's good to ask the Tottenham players who's going to score. Now, watch if we all captain Kane this week. Son's going to go and score 8 goals. But honestly, I have a funny feeling about Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Just have a feeling in my bones.
They're
United
up for the
are
taking
fucked right now. Everton at home. Everton have had some bad results. They're looking at United. They can see some weaknesses. I mean, I think Dominic Calvert-Lewin's going to score 2 goals this weekend. So I wouldn't put it past myself on a late triple captain for him. I wanted to late triple captain him
against United.
before his
Yeah, I know.
Guys,
Interesting.
But look, you're leading our league. You're number 1 in our league, so all hail to you.
I
If you
mean,
want captain,
I've had some, but I've also left like 80 points on the bench cumulatively. So let's not.
oh, must be nice, eh?
Yes.
That would have been his 101 points. Yeah.
Okay, guys, thanks. I think that's the right point for us to close the show. Thank you very much for watching and listening. If you're listening on the podcast, please do subscribe and interact with us on these platforms. Our Twitter handles are also on the at the bottom of our names if you haven't noticed anytime soon. But for myself and the Cheap Seats team for this week, enjoy your footballing weekend. It starts on Friday with I think it's Brighton versus Burnley, which could be a nice tasty one for all the Lamptey followers and managers. But enjoy this weekend. Manchester City and Liverpool is going to be great. From myself and the team, Le Sale Kakachis.